Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So it's been definitely quite some time since I've updated my top 5 assassins for the mid lane list, and I have been getting a lot of requests to finally update this list so you guys have an idea of what assassins you should be playing. So as usual guys, don't forget that this list is a mix of my personal opinion and also through looking at statistics and looking at just the win ratio of these champions throughout different regions such as NA, Korea, and EU. So with all of that stuff finally being said, I think we should finally jump into the number 5 spot, and starting things off for us is going to be LeBlanc. So she is definitely not an unfamiliar face whenever it comes to top 5 assassins list, because when you hear the word assassin, well, this champion should be one of the first that pops into your mind. However, the thing is now she's all the way down in the number 5 spot, and I was actually considering not even putting her in this list. Now this spot was going to be taken by someone like maybe Diana, but again, taking a bit of my own personal preference into this list, I decided to put LeBlanc. So one of the good things about LeBlanc is that she is getting a slight buff on the PvE, and of course coming to the live servers very soon where her E ability will work better. But other than that, I mean, LeBlanc is still LeBlanc, being known for just an absolute ridiculously strong lane bully, having insane mobility with her W, and of course using your ultimate's W as well. But this list, you're gonna notice, is very largely based off of Thunderlords, and whichever champions I personally believe can make use of Thunderlords better, especially in the laning phase, have higher priority in my mind. And LeBlanc is definitely no exception to that, fairly easily able to proc Thunderlords within the lane, already adding to her high burst damage. You can also go for 45% CDR now if you so choose to do so. Now I don't necessarily recommend doing it, but if you do, I mean, you'll have your W and your ultimate up that much faster and be that much more annoying. Whenever you're using your full combo to kill a target or just simply harass in the lane, so maybe using the W just to get in range or to actually hit them with it, following it up with a Q, the ultimate, and then the E ability, and then waiting for the E to root them, chances are you'll have your Q up once again and you can throw it too, and you'll just be doing an insane amount of damage. Very known for LeBlanc to do that, on top of adding Thunderlords with everything else. Now the reasons LeBlanc is all the way down in the number 5 spot, to the point where I almost thought of not including her in this list entirely, is because, well, when I was looking up the statistics for LeBlanc in NA, EU, and Korea, well, the win ratio was only around 46 or 47%. Now that's not very high, but I feel like the reason for that is because a lot of people may not know how to carry with this champion. Now this is definitely a flaw with LeBlanc, because even though she is a ridiculously strong laner if you play correctly, well, I mean, carrying the game at the end of the day is still somewhat challenging, because CSing on her isn't necessarily the easiest, essentially putting you into the position where you have to use your W and your ultimate in order to clear a wave. And in a team fight, even though you can more or less spam her abilities here and there, you do have to use them in proper succession, or you're not going to do the damage that you're required to do as an assassin, and you will just not be doing your job. But other than that, I'm personally still a big fan of LeBlanc, and I like to play her quite a bit, so this is an example of my personal opinion over statistics. And since this is a new thing I'm doing in these top 5 list, here are the items, the runes, and the masteries that you can run on LeBlanc. Again, keep in mind you can change this up how you see fit, but this is a general guideline. And moving up in the list, in the number 4 spot, we'll be talking about Echo. This is another example of a champion that I personally think is just very strong. I really enjoy playing him, and I wanted to share this with you guys. I personally do recommend picking up Echo if you haven't already. He has a very fun playstyle as an assassin. He's very strong, has a lot of potential, and he's really annoying to deal with. So he has a passive that increases his damage on the target, he increases his own move speed when you activate it, and he also decreases the champion's move speed. I mean, honestly, what more can you ask for? But then you take into account Thunderlords also having 3 stacks, so you can easily proc Thunderlords with your passive for bonus damage. But if you didn't know, Thunderlords instantly gains 2 stacks of the 3 whenever you hit a champion with your E ability, since your E ability is considered a spell and also an auto attack. So to proc Thunderlords in lane, all you have to do is E on your target and then either attack them one more time or just hit them with the Q just only one time. But other than that, Echo has something most other assassins don't have in their kit, and that's a pretty decent wave clear. I mean, his Q does a lot of damage to minions. If you are ahead, it will kill the backline minions within 1 Q. And if you have 40% CDR, well, you're going to be firing off these Qs every 2 or 3 seconds. One of the best things about Echo's kit, but also in my opinion the hardest, is his W. I mean, landing it on the target is not the easiest thing in the world, as long as your target is at least somewhat aware of what you're trying to do. However, getting those unexpected unexpected W stuns, especially in a team fight, and getting several people within it is definitely rewarding, and having an assassin with such an ability can be devastating. Using your ultimate, you can dodge almost anything in the game. It does an insane amount of damage, and a lot of people aren't looking at the little clone following you around, so you can get unexpected surprise damage from your ultimate like that. And taking Echo to the next level, you can also combine his ultimate with his W, where you go in for the EQ, harass, retreat, and as you're retreating, you throw your W to where your ultimate is gonna be, usually right where you were harassing your opponent, and then you can ult into the opponent while ulting into your W and get a double whammy. However, the bad thing is about Echo, well, missing your Q is gonna hurt quite a bit in the laning phase, so you wanna try to land that. Your W is one of the hardest things to land as well within his skid without question, and then also his ultimate not being super easy either. But this guy's definitely one of my favorite assassins, and I highly recommend trying him out. And just like LeBlanc, here are the items, the runes, and the masteries that you want to run whenever you're playing Echo. Alright guys, let's finally talk about the top 3 assassins as of right now. So these top 3 assassins are not only assassins that have high win ratios in all 3 of the regions, but I generally also think that they're very strong in this current meta. So starting things off here is going to be Fizz. Now the reason Fizz is decently high on the list, even though he is known to not have the best laning phase, is because it truly is very easy to also proc Thunderlords on this champion. But on top of that, it is also very easy to get 40% CDR on this champion as well. For instance, you can rush Lucidity Boots, get the 10% Fiendish Codex, which will eventually build into Morellos, get the Sheen effect, and then finish the Morellos, and then boom, 40% CDR right then and there. Now the one thing I hate about Fizz whenever I'm facing him as maybe someone else like Zed or something is if you ever make one mistake against this champion to the point where he kills you in a 1v1 scenario, well, it feels like your lane is pretty much done. Fizz is the definition of a champion where if you give him a small lead, well, it's not that much of a small lead to this champion because he will use that lead, he will snowball it harder than any other champion, and you can never step foot back into mid lane without dying. On top of that, him being able to dodge nearly anything in the game with his E ability, and overall just using the Zhonya's and his E ability to just dodge things in general, having high CDR, and having massive damage in his skid when combined with his ultimate. I think we can all agree that this is definitely not a champion you want to see fed unless it's on your team. So again, even though Fizz does more or less have a poor laning phase, you can still do decently okay, at least better than before, proccing the Thunderlords, using your E ability to go in for the damage, proccing with your W, and then queuing back out. So with that being said, if you're facing a melee champion, you should probably max your W first and then E, but if you're facing a ranged champion, you can go ahead and max your E first and then maybe W. But what are the bad things about this fish-like champion? Well, again, even though his laning phase is better, it is still somewhat poor, and there's a lot of champions that can abuse him. And his wave clear is quite poor when it comes to clearing the wave while the enemy team is pushing down on your tower. And before we end it for Fizz, here are the general runes, masteries, and even the items that you can run whenever playing this fish-like champion. Alright, so we finally made it to the number 2 spot, and this one is going to be featuring Talon. Now I feel like a lot of people will be happy about this. In my videos, I always see comments about Talon, whether it's people asking me to play him or just bringing him up in general. Well, based on the win ratios throughout each region and after actually trying him out myself once again in the preseason, I have to say he does feel quite strong. Now I still don't think he's better than the number 1 spot, which by now you probably already know what that is, but he's definitely still without question a threatening champion. Whenever I think of Talon, I always for some reason think of AD Fizz. Now obviously you have regular Fizz, but then Talon to me is like if Fizz was transformed into an AD assassin, well, this is how he would look like. They both have more or less the same issues in the laning phase. You know, they do have some potential range-ish kind of harass, but I mean it's nothing too crazy, and they have to wait till a certain power spike, usually at level 6. But the reason Talon is above Fizz is not only because I feel like the AD items like Yomu's are just fantastic, but number 2, Talon does have a harass ability in the lane being his W, and he also has a blink type ability, his E. So unlike someone maybe even like Diana, he can actually go to his target pre-level 6 and try to proc Thunderlords and deal a decent amount of damage, while someone like Diana again has to wait till 6 before even touching the target. So since Yomu's is so good, but also Mercurial Scimitar is very strong now as well, offering lifesteal and overall just great stats, this is also a fantastic buy on Talon. It really just all comes together works well makes Talon essentially what he is, but slightly better. So I have to finally agree, Talon is definitely strong, and I am definitely going to start picking him up more often. Now, what are the bad things about this AD assassin? Well, his laning phase, again, like I said earlier, can still be better. I mean, it's not absolutely horrible, but it is still somewhat relatively poor, and there's definitely some matchups where he will just get destroyed. But very similar to Fizz, if you give him that lead and you give him that extra kill or that free kill or whatever it may be, well, he is going to snowball quite heavily off of it as well. And the final thing is the fact that he is relatively countered by pink wards against a smart team, and you can see him coming in with his ultimate, so it does become relatively easier to stop his all-in. And just like the other champions, here are the runes, masteries, and items that you can run whenever playing Talon. And finally, the number one spot is going to be given to Zed. Now, I'm trying my best not to make this a biased opinion. I mean, I truly just feel like Zed is very strong. Whenever I personally played Zed, I mean, I've been doing really well with him lately. And whenever I would face a Zed that for the most part seemed like they know what they're doing, well, it was actually quite difficult. So I genuinely think that Zed is the number one assassin at the moment. And I'm sure after you guys watched my best Zed builds video, well, you probably got a similar impression as well. So why exactly am I considering Zed to be the best assassin? Well, once again, it comes down to Thunderlords. Of all the assassins, Zed definitely has to have the best way to proc it because he can do it at a very safe distance while also dealing quite a bit of damage. As you saw in the Cassiopeia right there, W-E Q with Thunderlords, half HP gone without any issues. And similar reasons to Talon, I mean, you have great items to build now. You have Maul Malmortius, you have Yomus, you have even Blade of the Rune King if you really want it. You have Hydra, you have the Mercurial Scimitar, you have Black Cleaver. I mean, you have so many great options and it all works well together. A lot of these items also now offer CDR, so getting 30% CDR on Zed, so maybe Black Cleaver and a Yomus, is fairly easy. But Zed as a champion is known to be very mobile, being able to dodge abilities as well with his ultimate, having abilities to make plays such as the one you just saw. And very recently, he also ended up getting buffed to where they increased the range on his W and the ultimate damage at rank 1 and rank 2. So when you combine everything together and even take into the fact that they buff precision for armor penetration, well, you have some deadly AD assassins. Now the bad thing is about Zed right now is, well, they quote-unquote bug fixed his WQ very recently as well. Now, I mean, it made him feel much more sluggish whenever using the harass combo in the lane, but I guess we can live with it. He's definitely very difficult to play the higher elo you start playing him in, and his ultimate, again, as usual, is still easily countered, whether it's QSS, Zhonya's, or several abilities. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, Zed has to be the best assassin as of right now. And just like the other champs, here are the runes, the masteries, and the items, even though you should already know this if you watched my video yesterday. So that is about it for this video. If you're wondering why Yasuo or someone like Diana weren't on this list, well, Diana, I just don't think she's that good in the lane, and I want people that can proc Thunderlords, and Yasuo, very low win ratio across all regions, and he really is just not that amazing at the moment either. If you really know what you're doing with him, yeah, it can work, but you really gotta know what you're doing. But other than that, guys, that is it for this top 5 assassins list. A lot of people have been asking for this updated version, so here you go. Make sure to hit the like button if you did enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't, check out the other videos as well, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.